am back with a really riveting cookbook. Beautiful to look at, by the way. Super color photos. It's called What's for Dinner, Dexter? Cooking for Your Dog Using Chinese Medicine Theory. This is a big learning curve for all of us. Judy Morgan, who's my co-host on Holistic Vets, co-wrote it with the author Tanya Wilhelm, who is here to talk to us about it. She's a master dog trainer, but she knows a few things about food, too. Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for having me on.
What a cool book. I have to tell you, I don't know what it is about cookbooks. When they have color photos of food, whether it's for dogs or for humans, it just makes it look really appetizing. And your photos are of the raw ingredients that go into these really neat recipes, some of which use things like, hello, alligator, and a lot of raw pork. I'm like, this is so cool. And I don't know, tangerines. Explain, if you can, in 150 words or less, Chinese medicine theory. It's the Chinese food theory. It's the hot and the cold and the damp and the heat. And it's like, I know there's a huge history to this, like the Chinese medicine of all kinds has a huge history where there's acupuncture or herbs, but their food theories are new to most of us. And yet people that go to holistic or integrative vets or get their hands on What's for Dinner, Dexter, it's pretty darn interesting the kinds of physical symptoms and issues that changing the food dramatically can change.
Right.
How did you learn about this, the Chinese food therapy, Chinese food medicine therapy theories?
That would be definitely Dr. Morgan. So Dr. Judy Morgan is the one who opened my eyes to what Chinese medicine can do with both humans and dogs and how each food has a different property and each property can treat a different condition for your health and your dog's health.
Are you one of those people that had the story about the dog with all the problems and, oh my God, this changed my life? Or was it really more, you know what, there's something so fascinating about this, and think of all the dogs with kidney problems or bladder problems or skin problems or heart problems who really could be helped by giving them food as medicine?
Well, sure, a little bit of both. I've always actually wanted to home cook for all my dogs. I just always was afraid. I was always afraid that I'd end up missing something and they wouldn't be able to get the right nutrients that they needed. And so I'd always be pulling that dry kibble and dumping it in the dog bowl going, I know there's got to be something better than this. Luckily, a couple of years ago, I met Dr. Morgan through Facebook, ironically, and so she started to do some food webinars, and that's kind of when I got hooked.
Oh, the food webinars. So that's how you learned it. Okay, I'm just gonna randomly flip open a page because some of these are like so cool, and you look at the picture and you go, "What's that a picture of?" Oh my God, it's a pork kidney. Okay, that's a pork kidney. So strawberries and clams, a wonderfully cool dish to help drain the damp and transform phlegm. So phlegm being dogs that have allergies. They don't necessarily have our drippy nose and eyes, but they might, right?
Right, and kind of like a buildup of fluids. So my current dog, Dexter, he's a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, and he's got a condition where the spinal fluid builds up in his spinal cord. And so what we're always focusing on with his diet is draining the damp and removing the phlegm to try to get that stuff moving. So those are something that I actually use a lot of in Dexter's recipes. And
Dr. Judy, when she has talked on Holistic Vets, she's she has a whole slew of Cavalier King Charles Spaniels herself. And very, very busy with Lucky Star Cavalier Rescue. She said that 93% of cavies have these issues with spinal cord fluid, whether it's extreme, with their skulls and their brains being, antagonistic to each other, so to speak, or just an ongoing underlying problem and heart problems that probably in some way come from it. So I just want to tell people what's in this particular recipe. I guess that if you had 150-pound English Mastiff, this would be more complicated, more costly, and difficult to make. But if you have a smaller dog, it's not just affordable, but it's kind of fun. But I don't know, where do you get a pork kidney? I'm sure you're going to tell me. So here's what goes into this recipe. Just think about this, folks. This is so different than anything you've heard before. This is not like a third protein, a third carbs, and a third veg or fruit, which I've always sort of talked about in a general way. This is medicine. Clam meat, pork kidney, strawberries, celery, shiitake mushroom, and brown rice. So what does a gal or a guy get a pork kidney if that's what you need? For a lot of these require pork meat, pork kidneys, chicken hearts. How do you get those?
Yeah, well, one, you can go to your local meat market. So they tend to have a lot of different foods that you can find.
Oh.
I've been doing a lot of looking and sourcing for that myself. We've been doing some co-op places, so they have like co-op meat places
Nice
where the
idea.
food's a little more local, and you kind of know the farmers, and you can find their practices. And in our cookbook, just like any other cookbook, you can always substitute. So if you can't find pork kidney, then maybe you can find beef kidney, or maybe you can use another property. So that's why throughout the book, each ingredient kind of tells you what that function is, so that if you want to keep that function, you can kind of substitute it for something else.
So here's one of my favorites, and something that some people might want to try on their young children in the morning just to kind of get their attention. Alligator oatmeal. But we're not kidding. This is not like a cute name. This uses alligator meat. So it says alligator meat.
Dexter's favorite.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, well, he loves alligator meat.
It seems like a great use of, I mean, I guess there are alligator farms now, yes, that they raise alligators for their skin, but then for their flesh as well?
Yeah, so we got that at our local meat market. So we actually have our fish market, to be exact. I was there, and Dr. Morgan laughs at me because I'll be in a fish market, and I'll be like, oh, alligator meat. And I give her a quick message, is this okay for the dogs, or what does it do for the dogs? You know, just a couple weeks ago, I was at our market, and it's not in that cookbook, but I'm like, octopus. What does octopus do?
Seriously.
So that was like,
so you begin to look at unique and novel proteins or ingredients and wonder, well, how do the Chinese view that ingredient in terms of whether it's cool or a yin tonic or a blood tonic or a yang tonic? I mean, all these things are clearly laid out in Chinese medicine theory. This isn't something you're making up just because it seems funny or fun. There's real Chinese science behind it. It's not Western science. You know, but it's a much older, in a sense, you know, has more gravitas than our science, which is, you know, I don't know, the potato chip company pays someone to do a study on how much fat and salt there really is in those potato chips. We're talking at the other end of the health spectrum. So the alligator oatmeal involves alligator meat, which is cool and a yin tonic, pork kidney, neutral yin tonic and a blood tonic, yellow squash, cool, chi tonic, strawberries, which are neutral, yang tonic, spinach, which is cool and a blood tonic, apple, neutral yin tonic, transforms phlegm, celery, cool, drains damp, and steel cut oats, warm, chi tonic. So you tell what each of the ingredients is doing and why they're in there together. But for those of us now, where is your market that has alligator? We don't have that in the Hamptons or in Vermont, alligator. Where could other people find alligator?
I believe so. I'm in Toledo, Ohio, so we're not very, good at having a lot of good foods there. So if we can find it in Toledo, I'm sure that if you do a little look, you might be able to find it. We've also been looking at different sites online to see if there's different ways to order some meats online. Obviously, when you're doing that, they have to freeze it and ship it, and sometimes that can become costly. And that recipe there actually smells really good when it cooks. Some of the recipes are a little stewy, maybe not so tasty, but this one's nice and sweet and definitely gets you going, maybe I should try that out a little bit.
Well, some of them look like, why wouldn't we try them? I mean, it's interesting. Yep. There's a lot of use of pork. Is that because the Chinese, in their own diet, pork is one of their major proteins?
Well, we just use it because it's a nice kind of neutral meat, and it's pretty easy to find. So, it's one of those, when we're looking at the recipes, when we were trying to decide which recipes would actually go into the cookbook, we didn't want to make it too extreme to make it too hard for everyone to do. Like I said, I'll hit the octopus and stuff, and I was even kind of considering about that alligator. Are people really going to go out and get the alligator? Are they going to do that? But again, just like a cookbook, you can always substitute if you can't find alligator meat, another type of cooling meat to fill that gap.
Well, it is funny to think that you think alligator was easy to find. I mean, for all I know, it is. I've just actually never looked. But if they're alligator farms and they're raising these alligators for the outside to make bags or shoes or belts, then the fact that there's a use for the meat, a good use for the meat, is good news. It's a form of, completely utilizing something that you're raising. There's one that What's Up Doc, which is a really cute name and has a really cool picture of a goat lung nestling next to a really nice looking, what looks like a gala apple. So goat lung. I mean, okay, rabbit meat, I think that's pretty easily sourced now. People, online can find rabbit meat, but goat lung. Tell us why goat lung versus some other animal's lung.
No particular reason. I just tended to find my hands on it. When I tend to go to the grocery stores and the meat markets, I just look to see what they have and see if there's anything different. I just try to mix things up, give them different, taste buds and that sort of thing. But again, you can always substitute for something else. I just, let's give this a try. They had goat lung at our meat market again. So
no kidding.
Give it a shot. Yeah.
Now, do you have a big immigrant population from some particular countries? I'm thinking that in cities, Chicago, New York, I don't know where else, San Francisco.
Yeah, I think that one was a northeastern type of meat market that I went to. Actually,
Yes.
was the one that I always go to. There's two in town that I tend to hit a little bit, and that was that one. They had a lot of goat and the hot meats and lamb and that sort of thing.
So that's a really interesting thing to go into, and it's fun and interesting for us as well, whether we're going to also find spices in those areas, in those neighborhoods, if you will, or in those meat markets, different spices, different vegetables, not just different meat sources. So going to other nationalities or other ethnicities, certainly anyone that has a Chinatown in their town can find a lot of these things for human consumption. And in the other areas, they're for human consumption as well, in cultures in which a lot of goat is eaten. All parts of the goat are eaten in different dishes. Yep. But I would imagine that these organ meats are fairly inexpensive compared to muscle meat.
They are. They're a lot more inexpensive. It's just a matter of finding them. That's actually, I try to get everything organic. That goat meat wasn't organic, but from here on out, I've been trying to do more organic, and that's been more tricky. That's been a little trickier process for me. So that's when I try to do our co-ops, is when I'm starting to get a little bit more of that.
Right, because they're just raising some goats either for milk or some other reason on their farm. And once in a while, I guess, a goat sort of kicks the bucket or hits the dust or whatever. Yeah. And so it's like, wow, now there's some goat meat, which I'm sure is the way it is in villages and, far-flung places where you don't eat the goat until the goat's ready to go. And in the meantime, it gives you a lot of milk and I guess cleans up your yard because it'll eat anything.
Right.
I guess the thing about organic is you don't really think of a goat being factory farmed. So I guess organic is more important when you think about foods that are factory farmed, like, American pork and American beef at close confinement and often inhumane conditions, but also with practices that would incorporate a lot of harsh treatment and maybe not the best diet for those animals. Whereas, I mean, how bad can life be for an alligator on an alligator farm? I mean, they can't really feed them like the worst thing in the world. Whatever alligators eat, I'm sure they can just get that for them, right?
Right. But it's too, we always want to consider, are they throwing in a lot of antibiotics? So if the farm is congested and they're throwing antibiotics into the feed, then we don't want to be able to give that back to our dogs. So
right, that's true. But then there's always that funny thing when you do go to buy, not listed as organic, but called all natural chicken, and it says no antibiotics and no growth hormones. And then the small print says the FDA does not allow growth hormones on a poultry farm. So it's like sort of like saying an apple is gluten-free. Yeah. So that's a strange claim because guess what? How could there ever be gluten in an apple? And so a lot of the claims, we worry that a lot of commercially produced meats and flesh have both antibiotics and growth hormones or other chemicals. But many species of animal that are grown for human consumption, they're not allowed to have it in them anyway. So it's sort of like, oh, great, antibiotic free. Yes, but antibiotics have never been used on that species of animal anyway. So,
yeah, they can be very tricky.
Yes. So, they're trying to tell you something's clean and fresh and you're like, oh, I'm so relieved. But guess what? All the chicken in the case, even $1 less a pound, is free of whatever that thing may be. I think you've done a super job with this book. There may be people that have a dog with serious issues like Dexter does, and many breeds of dogs with serious issues where cooking with Chinese medicine theory will really help alleviate a lot of their symptoms, maybe even in some underlying way cure the problem. But for other people, it's great to dip into this and just experiment, have fun a couple of times a week, make some crazy dish and just have the fun of doing it. I mean, there's one called Leftovers. It uses some beef rounds, some beef liver, carrots, tomato, and an orange, and some wild rice. I love that there's an orange in there. It's just it's surprising things, and all of them are there for a reason. They're not just there to be silly. That's what I like. They're all there to really to fit into a Chinese medicine food theory in a way that really will benefit the animals. And I guess the most hilarious picture to me, I don't know why I think it's so funny, is a picture of pork tenderloin, which looks really excellent, and some celery, and a big banana nestled up against the pork that's ground up raw, and some chicken hearts and some mung beans. You've done a swell job, Tanya. It's really a hoot and fun to see all of these ingredients, and I don't in any way mean to make fun of it. I think it's just surprising and so cool that you get to put oranges and bananas and, I don't know, goat liver in with your pet's food, and be part of the larger world view of what makes food and what makes food good. So well done on this. Thank you so much. And I appreciate that. Looking forward to hearing how Dexter's doing. Keep in touch. I'd love to put a photo of him up on social media with the interview, because he's one handsome little devil.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tracy. Bye-bye.